There's this quiet revolution happening right now, just a few hundred kilometers over our heads. It's this incredible promise to connect every last person on Earth with high-speed internet. But, and this is a big but, it's also creating a crisis that could completely change our relationship with the sky forever.
Okay, look at this number. Over 7 million. That's not some far-off projection. That's how many people are already using these new satellite networks. It's a user base that is just exploding for a technology that honestly felt like science fiction just a couple of years ago.
And I want to be clear, this is not a concept. It is a live, global service right now for millions of people out in the countryside, on boats in the middle of the ocean, or even on airplanes. The internet isn't coming through a dusty old cable in the ground anymore. Nope, it's being beamed directly from a satellite flying by.
And that really gets us to the heart of the matter, doesn't it? Are these thousands and thousands of new satellites the key to finally closing the digital divide for good? Or are we kind of sleepwalking into a massive crisis of orbital pollution, with consequences we're just now beginning to wrap our heads around? So let's start with the dream, because it is a big one. We're talking about bringing real, usable internet to hundreds of millions of people who have terrible access or none at all. Think about disaster relief. When an earthquake or a fire takes out all the ground infrastructure, these networks just keep working. And maybe the coolest part is this new idea of a safety net that connects right to the phone in your pocket, even if you're 100 miles from the nearest cell tower.
So who's actually behind all this? Who's launching thousands of these things into space? Well, it's not just one company. It's basically become a new global space race.
I mean, the sheer scale of this is just wow. SpaceX's Starlink is obviously the one everyone knows, with almost 8,500 satellites up there already and plans for thousands more. But they are not alone. Amazon's Project Cooper is rolling out its own massive fleet, and then you have China's Goang network, which wants to launch nearly 13,000 satellites. We are literally industrializing low Earth orbit. What's interesting is there are kind of two different ways they're tackling this. On one side, you have the high-speed broadband. That's the one that needs a dish on your roof or on your RV. But on the other side, and this is a real game changer, is this direct-to-phone service. No extra gear needed. It just turns the smartphone you already own into a satellite phone for emergencies when you're completely off the grid.
But, nothing this big comes for free, right? This amazing technological leap has a cost. And we're just now, as a planet, starting to tally up the bill and figure out what all these unintended consequences really look like. The very first problem is something astronomers saw coming from a mile away. For anyone who looks up at the night sky, whether it's your job or you just do it for fun, things are changing. The sky is literally getting filled with these artificial streaks of light. And this isn't just some small annoyance. For huge, groundbreaking projects like the Rubin Observatory, which is designed to take a picture of the entire sky every few nights, this is a disaster. The fear is that their images, these priceless windows into the universe, are going to be photobombed by satellite trails thousands of times, every single night.
But here's where it gets even wilder. The problem isn't just about what we can see. It's not just light pollution. There's this whole other more insidious problem that's cropping up: noise pollution.
So get this, recent studies found something pretty alarming. The newer satellites are, well, they're leaking radio signals. It's not their main broadcast. It's more like electronic static from the hardware itself. And the newest models, they can be up to 32 times louder in certain radio bands. Imagine you're trying to listen for the faintest whispers from the cosmos, and someone is just blasting static in your ear. That's what radio astronomers are facing. Okay, so we've talked about the view from Earth. Now let's go up into orbit itself, because things are getting, well, dangerously crowded up there. We are creating a cosmic traffic jam.
Think about this for a second. Just one company's satellites, Starlink, are now involved in over half of all the close calls between active satellites in orbit. We're talking about thousands of near-miss alerts every single week. As more and more constellations go up, that risk of a catastrophic collision just skyrockets.
And it turns out, these satellites are a lot more fragile than you might think. Back in 2022, a pretty minor solar storm hit Earth, just a little hiccup in space weather. And poof, 38 brand new, freshly launched Starlink satellites literally fell out of the sky and burned up. It was a wake-up call that space can turn billions of dollars of hardware into space junk in a heartbeat. But the story doesn't end in orbit. When these thousands of satellites get old and die, they're designed to fall back to Earth and burn up in our atmosphere.
And that process, well, that's creating a whole new kind of pollution that we have never had to think about before. See, when a satellite burns up, all the aluminum in its structure creates this cloud of teeny tiny particles. It's called aluminum oxide. And unlike pollution down here that gets rained out, these things can just hang out in the upper atmosphere for decades, slowly building up as more and more satellites come down.
And why should you care? Well, the first climate models are raising some serious red flags. All that junk floating up there could actually heat up parts of the atmosphere by about 1.5 degrees Celsius. And even worse, it could slow down the healing of our planet's protective ozone layer. That is a huge deal. So, with all these risks piling up, light pollution, collision risk, even atmospheric changes, you've got this frantic race going on right now. Regulators, scientists, engineers, everyone is scrambling to write new rules of the road for this new era in space. And we are actually seeing some progress. You know, the old voluntary guideline was the super lax 25-year rule for getting your dead satellite out of the sky. After a very public near miss in 2019, everyone realized that just wasn't going to cut it. So today, in the US, the FCC has a mandatory 5-year deorbit rule. 5 years. That is a massive step in the right direction. Space traffic management is also getting a huge upgrade. The old way, and I am not kidding about this, was literally operators from different companies coordinating maneuvers over email chains. It was insane. Now we're moving to automated systems that can scan for potential collisions and get warnings out in minutes, not hours. So that's where we are. We have this incredible world-changing promise on one hand, and these very real, very serious risks on the other. So how do we find a way to get all the benefits of connecting the world without permanently trashing our orbit and our view of the stars?
Well, a lot of experts are starting to agree on what a middle path could look like. First, you take that 5-year deorbit rule and you make it a global binding standard for everyone. Then you set real engineering rules. Your satellites can't be too bright or too noisy. You force everyone to share their tracking data openly so we all know where everything is. And finally, you invest heavily in both automated traffic control and in new technology to actively clean up the junk that's already up there. And really, all of this leads to one final huge question. For the first time in history, private companies are building and controlling this strategic, global infrastructure. So as they race to build out this new frontier, the real question is who ultimately gets to write the rules for the sky that belongs to all of us.